Ron Poliquin, DoverLawOffice.com. The Fair Labor Standards Act entitles you to time and a half if you work over 40 hours a week unless you're an exempt employee. It's probably one of the most abused and violated laws, employment laws in the country. We're going to go over some misclassifications as far as who needs to worry, who's likely to be owed overtime or not being paid overtime. So, in the tradition of Jeff Foxworthy, when he used to tell those, he tells those you might be a redneck jokes. Well, we're going to tell a listing of you might be paid overtime. So instead of you might be a redneck, you might be owed overtime. If you're a manager, but you don't manage anything, and you do everything everyone else does, you're probably owed overtime. These fake manager exemptions, they classify employees as managers or assistant managers when their job duties are essentially the same as employees, or the same employees who supposedly work for them. Always be careful of the title shift supervisor. That's always a red flag for somebody that is basically in charge of nothing and is probably owed overtime. If you get paid a salary of less than $455 a week per the Fair Labor Standards Act and you work over 40 hours a week, you're probably owed overtime. If you're required or expected to work off the clock, meaning you're working before 15 minutes before you clock in, 15 minutes after you clock out, sometimes this becomes part of the work culture, you're probably owed overtime. If you're required or expected to work through unpaid rest or meal breaks, you're probably owed overtime. If you're required or expected to do extra work at home, like you bring a bunch of work home and that's not compensated, you're probably owed overtime. If you take a lot of time to put on and take off protective gear and clothing at the work site and aren't paid for it, you're probably owed overtime. If you're required to report to a particular location, like you're transported or you drive from there and like you drive to work and then you're transported to another work site and you're not paid for that time, you're probably owed overtime. If you're not paid for training and other mandatory activities, you're probably owed overtime. Now, these are mandatory laws. You're owed the time that you work, and you're owed time and a half if you work over 40 hours a week, and you're not listed under the exemptions. So be educated, find out what you need to find out. If you are under this list, then be sure to look further if you're owed overtime. DoverLawOffice.com. Thank you.